When it comes to retro game collecting, a very big issue when it comes to these kinds of games here is where to store them. Now, a lot of times you might be thinking, well, just get the original box for it, and then that way you have like easy storage for it, but you can kind of protect the cartridge itself from the elements, especially if you have one that's quite valuable. You go and try to find one. But a lot of the times, they'll be either really expensive or they look like this, where they're kind of smushed, they got a lot of damage on it, some wear and tear, and it's not going to really look that nice in your collection. And so, what's the even point of getting a thing to store this in if the thing itself isn't in the best shape? But unfortunately, that's how a lot of these original boxes are. They're cardboard boxes. They're not really meant to last very long. They were kind of just meant to be thrown away. Well, another option you can have for your retro game cartridges is custom cases, which I have right here. This is just one of many of the different variety of cases that I have for cartridges. We're going to be not only looking at different versions of these cases, but also just different consoles and things like that. This way you can kind of get like a wide variety if you're looking for handheld game stuff, or maybe you're looking for something kind of like obscure like 32X, not very popular these days. But basically what I'm getting at is that what most modern games use is a plastic case like this. It's in this nice protective case. It'll take some abuse and not look too bad. That's what's nice about plastic cases, is that it'll kind of protect the cartridges a little bit more. And what I have here in particular are ones for 32X. These are the ones I wanted to start with first, because these are universal game cases. Now, these ones in particular I found on eBay because I wanted to get some cases for my 32X cartridges. Of course, I'll show off the Knuckles one actually, because this one here, this is the reason why I went and got the custom game cases, is because of the fact that I wanted to have something for a game like this protected. And as you can see here, there's nothing fancy about the actual inside of it. It's mainly just the cover, which you could print on your own too. Like, this is something you could perfectly make on your own. I just lack the ability to do so because I just don't have time, patience, and a really nice printer to do so with. And not everyone also does have like a very nice printer to print high quality pictures. And of course this uses a decent amount of ink. Ink's expensive. So that's where a lot of lovely companies or people on Etsy or eBay come in to kind of help you out with that. And in this one in particular, I go out on eBay from this lovely gentleman right here. I'll put on the screen here. If you want to shop on eBay for some custom game cases, check him out. He's mainly where I got my Sega 32X cases. So if you want to mainly shop for this, go ahead. And if there's anything else you see there, go ahead and just show him some love. But honestly, like, these were great. He had great reviews on it, and I was pretty happy with it. And I mean, yeah, these store pretty well. Now, I've been familiar with these kinds of cases. I see them online a lot. But basically, these are universal, like the name says. You can put things like 32X, which has a similar shape to the Sega Genesis cartridges, which you could put there too. I don't know if you could see, but there's clear labels for this stuff. It even holds Electronic Arts Genesis cartridges, which are typically bigger. And it also holds Super Nintendo cartridges as well as N64 and some other stuff. But some of the stuff isn't advertised to work for this. Like, of course, the NES doesn't really work right off, just buying it right off the bat. You do kind of have to modify the case a bit in order to really use it. Like, if you keep these parts but cut out everything else, you will be able to fit the NES in here, and people have done it. But if you're not really into all that, this might not be a good option for your NES collection. But for this case, I was able to use it for Sega Genesis 32X. That one's kind of hard to find people to make a custom case for, because it's kind of like a harder, it's kind of more of like a niche console to get that for, which is why I'm super happy I was able to find this. And this guy also, I think pretty much he did every single game for it as well, all the games that have cartridges for the 32X. So this was pretty cool. I basically bought the whole batch in one go. So I mean, this isn't every single one, of course, but I don't have all the 32X cartridges. This is all the ones I've owned. And I do have some in their original box, of course, like this. I gotta get cases for them as well. The only bad thing I don't like about these is that if you have a manual, you're really not gonna fit it in this tight space here. Like for some of these, I do have the manual, but I don't know. I'm not super nitpicky with this. Like in this instance, for all the cartridges that I owned that didn't have a box, I just didn't have manuals for them. Like I only have 6 of these in the box, and the rest were loose until I got these cases. So in this instance, I wasn't too harmed by it. But this might not be a good choice either for universal game cases if you want to have something to hold the manual, which is where we kind of get into our next thing. This is kind of going into handhelds a bit, so we're going to move that to the side. But here we have Game Boy cases. This is from another seller on eBay, and you've probably seen these before because I've definitely talked about them when I first got them. Now, Pokemon was obviously the main reason why I got these cases, because I've had Game Boy games for quite a while, and I never felt the need to put them in a case. I just kind of had them in all in a bag. But seeing the way these look made me want to really get all of them in a case. And the reason why I did it for Pokemon necessarily is because I was really going on a super huge Pokemon collecting spree. And while I'm down to maybe my last 4 Pokemon games, I still haven't quite got them all yet. But here's all of them. All 3 like kind of generations, or all 3 versions of the Game Boy. We have the original Game Boy here. We have the Game Boy Color. And we have Game Boy Advance, which is really, really nice. I love that you have the ability to use all 3 here. Now, this is very similar to the next one I want to show off, but it is not from the obvious custom game cases, as you can see from the logo here. This is from another eBay user, which I will also again put right here. Now, he not only does Game Boy, but he does DS, I believe he does 3DS, he does Switch, and other stuff as well. So if you want to show him some love, go do that. He's really good, has great reviews, and as you can see here, I'm in love with these cases here. And while there are some little like obvious flaws here and there, like I did buy these in bulk, so it was probably a big order with one guy kind of doing the whole operation. I'm not very nitpicky when it comes to eBay and Etsy projects like these, because typically it is a one-man show a lot of the time with these things. So for all intents and purposes, this came out really nice. So if you don't mind the little blemishes here and there, the nitpicky stuff, it's all really not a big deal. I mean, these came out perfect. When they're on a shelf, you really can't tell the differences and stuff. And a big fun fact too is that for Game Boy Advance in particular, a lot of the original like DS cases had a Game Boy Advance slot. But the biggest problem with using them is that if you had a manual, again, you couldn't fit them in the manual area, which in this instance you could, because this is also kind of based off of the custom game cases design, because they also too have like this little area, like there's like a plastic bar here that prevented you from putting the manuals in properly. Here that doesn't have that. And they have a mold here where you could fit your Game Boy, like regular Game Boy and Game Boy Color stuff. Something you can't fit though is stuff like the Rumble stuff, like the Perfect Dark has Rumble Pack, Wario. There's a Wario game that has like a little kind of like it's a weird cartridge. Let's just say that. If you have like a not normal Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Color or even regular Game Boy cartridge, if it's not like the standard, it won't fit into these. That's where custom game cases comes in, because they have like a bigger case. Base that I bought these guys from does requests as well. For instance, I did not see these on his normal page. They weren't just like a listing on there. He had a listing where it was just a custom order, where basically you put that in the cart, you put it in the description of what ones you wanted, and he just do it for you. And that's another thing I really like about that, is that basically if there was any Game Boy game that I wanted to have a case for, I could basically guarantee it. I know for Switch for sure he has that as well. So that's another one if you want to show support too. Show your support for these guys. They do an amazing work there. But going on to the final group of cases that we're going to be taking a look at is the big one, custom game cases. I'm sure you guys have heard of them. The one I want to kind of show off first is the Virtual Boy ones. These guys are great because there's a lot of times where you'll have like a weird instance, like I said, with those Game Boy games that have like those weird kind of accessories or things to it where they need a bigger case. Custom game cases always kind of comes in there and helps you out with that and to make everything uniform. I mean, even with Virtual Boy, Nintendo kind of considers as a handheld, even though it's really not. But here, because of them, you can have every single Nintendo handheld game kind of all match with each other with like the DS, 3DS, and then you also have it with the Game Boy stuff. I mean, look at how nice these all fit together. They all use the regular DS style case too, so really good. These feel super quality, and while these weren't bad either, like these were amazing. These are a slightly bigger company, so there's a lot more care being able to be done with these. You have like customgamecases.com on there as the logo, but yeah, like these feel like super quality, you know. There's not much difference in feel to the DS ones in comparison to these, which is really nice because I like being able to kind of just have these blend in with my other stuff on the shelf, all matching. And so here you have like 8 out of the 14. I have 2 other Virtual Boy games. I just don't have the cases for them, but they have every single Virtual Boy game. They even do fan games as well. Like there are some fan games like Virtual Boy fan games that they have cases for, and I don't think they do requests, unfortunately, but they add constant new titles to their catalog every day, like for the cases. And so that's pretty neat. Another thing I want to go back to kind of Sega here for a second. Sega Genesis was very ahead of its time when it came to case packaging, because obviously this is a genuine Sega Genesis case and it's a plastic case. This is something where, you know, obviously they were kind of ahead of their time when it came to something like this, but then when it came to 32X, they kind of just, I don't know what they were thinking here with that. But this was really nice. It even had like a little tab here where it was meant for retail stores, but you could kind of use this to display your games in a much unique way in comparison to your other stuff. And they also do the same thing here. They make Genesis cases as well. And it's just in case, like, you can't, like, these are still hard to find sometimes, even though these were probably not thrown out as much. There were some Genesis games that also just came in cardboard, similar to the 32X one. And for this to be on your shelf, it really doesn't look that bad. Of course, this is a darker red. It will stick out a bit, but nothing like too outrageous. Like, this will kind of mostly blend in. And what I noticed is that they mainly use like the red striped pattern here, like the, I guess you could say 2.0 Genesis design, and they don't really do like that black grid design that the original Genesis games came in. So that's kind of a bummer. I don't know, as far as I know, they don't have like a way to do it the other way, like the first original cover, but this is just as good. Honestly, I kind of like it like this, because from this design moving forward, of course, you see the 32X kind of kept that design. The Saturn had a white version. The Sega CD had a blue version. The only one that didn't keep up with that design was the Dreamcast. So this kind of uniforms everything in a sense. So if you kind of wanted to uniform all the stuff, then that's another great plus for it. But they also did that with Game Gear games too. Game Gear games, I believe, originally were in a cardboard box as well. But here you have basically a mini Genesis case for Game Gear though. And it is pretty cool. I mean, I have Tales of Venture here, which is a pretty decently priced Game Gear game. And I have, again, it has even the little tab here, so you could kind of display your Game Gear games in this nice, unique way. And it just, look at how tiny it is in comparison. It's just so, it's like a bite-sized version. It's so cool in my opinion. Like, that is awesome. And I would love to get like a complete collection of Game Gear with this case in mind, just like having them all displayed like that. But the big names that we are all waiting for here are the N64. We got Super Nintendo right here, and then of course we have the original NES. And I only have one game for the NES in a case like this, and that's this triple pack with Mario Bros, Duck Hunt, and World Class Track Meet, which I think is kind of funny. But so with NES, we'll use this one first. NES, the boxes were in a vertical scape, so this kind of basically mimics that to a T. The spine's basically the same, with this kind of added on, which is a really nice touch, and the back's the same. It's not much different in comparison to an NES box. It's just now in a plastic case, which is really good, and it holds it really well. And a spot for your manual too, if you have a manual, which is another thing, big plus. Now for Super Nintendo and N64, is a bit of a difference because, of course, these didn't come like this. They came in a landscape like this, sideways, instead of a vertical kind of deal going on. But I kind of prefer this way instead of this way. Especially when you do, there is an option, they give you an option to do it this way. It looks horrible. I hate it. I don't like it. If I was going to have it as like a landscape, I would have just done the cardboard boxes. But I mean, these are the spines of it. Looks really cool. Love the N64. I do overall really like it. And for N64 in particular, it also has like the different things. Info, the normal info that you would see on a normal N64 box. The expansion, the memory, the rumble thing, the 4 controller stuff. And then for Super Nintendo here, you know, you just kind of have like basically what you would expect here. Same thing with the side as well, and then cool looking back for this. It is really nice. Now, what the Super Nintendo one looks like on the inside here fits it really well. That's awesome. Another spot for your manuals. Then of course for N64, you have like the added like slot here for your memory cards or expansions, rumbles, whatever the accessory need be here. And the last thing I want to point out is they also make, again, they make cases for stuff like this, like the Super Game Boy. And here, mine came a little broken. I don't know what went on with this. Normally it doesn't look like this, but they make a thing like this for Super Game Boy, and that was really awesome. And that will pretty much wrap up today's video. Let me know what you guys think. Do you prefer just using regular cardboard boxes like the original packaging for your cartridge games to store them, or do you prefer putting them in these plastic cases? Personally, me speaking, I love the actual plastic cases because, again, they last longer. I feel like it protects the games better, and it matches with the rest of the modern games. It matches seamlessly to me, and that's like my personal opinion. I love these with a passion. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And as always, if you guys have enjoyed my content today, a like and subscribe really helps out the channel if you want to give some support. And as always, I've been Station X. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.